I walked alone down Miller's Ridge Trail that October evening, my breath forming small clouds in the cooling air. The sun had dipped below the tree line 20 minutes earlier, and shadows stretched long across the packed dirt path. I'd hiked this route dozens of times before, always finishing before dark. But today I'd started late after a difficult conversation with my sister. I needed to clear my head, and the forest had always been my sanctuary. The first howl came when I was roughly 2 miles from the trailhead. It started low, almost like a moan, then rose into something that made the hair on my arms stand straight up. I stopped walking immediately, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. It sounded like a wolf, though I knew there hadn't been wolves in these mountains for over 60 years. Maybe a coyote, I thought, trying to calm myself. Coyotes were common enough, and their calls could be unsettling to the unprepared. I continued walking, picking up my pace slightly. The trail wound through dense pine forest here, and the failing light made it difficult to see more than 30 feet in any direction. My hiking boots crunched against fallen needles and small stones. The familiar rhythm should have been comforting, but instead I found myself listening for sounds between my own footfalls. The forest had gone quiet in that way it sometimes does, as if every creature was holding its breath. Another howl pierced the air, closer this time, much closer. I spun around, scanning the darkening woods behind me. Nothing moved among the trees. The sound had definitely come from that direction, from somewhere along the path I'd just traveled. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone, thinking I might call someone, anyone, just to hear a human voice. No signal. Of course, there was no signal this deep in the woods. I started walking faster, my eyes darting between the trail ahead and the forest on either side. The howl came again, and this time I noticed something that sent ice through my veins. There was a strange quality to it, something not quite right. It rose and fell in the pattern of a wolf's howl, hitting all the right notes, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded almost like it was being forced through the wrong kind of throat. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not the soft pad of paws, but the distinct crunch of boots on the trail behind me. Someone was following me, maintaining a distance of maybe 50 yards. I could hear them matching my pace, speeding up when I sped up. My mouth went dry. The howling hadn't been an animal at all. Someone was making those sounds while they followed me through the darkening forest. I broke into a jog, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. The footsteps behind me quickened to match. I could hear branches snapping now, hear someone breathing hard with the effort of keeping up. Another howl erupted from behind me, and this time it was unmistakably human. The pretense was gone. Whoever was back there wanted me to know they were chasing me, wanted me to hear that artificial howl that had initially frozen me with primal fear. The trail curved sharply to the left, and I took the turn too fast, nearly sliding on loose gravel. My ankle twisted slightly, but held. I couldn't afford to fall. The parking area was still over a mile away, and full darkness would arrive in minutes. I fumbled in my jacket pocket for my small flashlight, nearly dropping it before getting it switched on. The narrow beam illuminated the trail ahead, but it also announced my exact position to whoever was behind me. I heard laughter then, echoing through the trees. It was a man's voice, deep and rough. He wasn't even trying to hide anymore. The footsteps came faster, closer. I could hear him talking to himself, or maybe to Maya's words, too distant to make out clearly, but the tone unmistakable. He was enjoying this. This was a game to him, a hunt, and I was the prey he'd selected for his evening entertainment. My lungs burned as I pushed myself harder, running now in earnest. The trail here was relatively straight for about a quarter mile, before it entered a series of switchbacks that would take me down the ridge toward the parking area. If I could just reach those switchbacks, I might be able to lose him in the turns, might be able to hide behind a tree or rock outcropping. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all I had left. Another howl, and this one was so close I could hear the human breaths between the notes. He was maybe 20 yards behind me now. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw a flashlight beam sweeping through the trees. He was bigger than me, Foster than me, and he was gaining ground. My mind raced through options. I had pepper spray on my keychain, but my keys were in my backpack's outer pocket, and I couldn't stop running long enough to dig them out. The switchbacks appeared ahead, and I dove into the first turn, cutting it as tight as possible. The trail dropped steeply here, a series of sharp turns that descended the face of the ridge. I clicked off my flashlight and immediately stumbled, catching myself against a tree trunk. But now I was invisible in the darkness. Just another shadow among thousands. I held my breath, pressing myself against the rough bark. The man's footsteps pounded past the first switchback, continuing straight for a moment before he realized I'd turned. I heard him curse, the words sharp and angry. His flashlight beam swung wildly, searching. I slid down the slope slightly, moving as quietly as possible to the next switchback below. Loose dirt and pine needles gave way beneath my feet, and I had to grab at branches to keep from sliding too fast and making noise. He howled again, but this time it sounded frustrated rather than triumphant. The artificial wolf call echoed off the ridge face, bouncing between trees. He kept moping, descending through the darkness, my hands scraped by bark and my face whipped by unseen branches. I could hear him above me, crashing through the underbrush, no longer staying on the trail. He was trying to cut me off, trying to head down the ridge in a straight line while I was forced to follow the switch. My foot caught on a root, and I went down hard, barely suppressing a yelp of pain. My knee struck a rock, and I felt my jeans tear. Blood, warm and wet, soaked through the fabric immediately. I lay still for a moment, listening. The man had stopped moving. The forest was silent, except for the wind moving through the pines high above. Was he listening for me? Had he heard me fall? Minutes passed, like hours. My knee throbbed, but I didn't dare move to examine it. Then I heard it, the soft crunch of careful footsteps moving down the slope to my right. He was maybe 15 yards away, moving slowly now, searching. His flashlight was off. He was hunting in the darkness, listening for any sound that would give away my position. I held perfectly still, barely breathing, willing myself to become part of the forest floor. The footsteps came closer. I could hear his breathing now, could hear fabric brushing against branches. 8 yards. 6 yards. I slowly reached down and found a stone the size of my fist. If he came much closer, I would throw it as hard as I could into the forest to my left. Hope he went after the sound while I ran in the opposite direction. It was a terrible plan, but it was all I had. 4 yards. 3 yards. I could smell him now, a mixture of sweat and something medicinal, like menthol. My fingers tightened around the stone. Then, miraculously, his phone rang. The sudden electronic trill shattered the silence, and I heard him answered with a frustrated whisper. Someone on the other end was talking, their voice a tinny echo. The man backed away, still whispering angrily into his phone, his footsteps receding up the slope. I didn't wait to hear more. The moment he was far enough away, I got to my feet and ran. My injured knee screamed in protest, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I flew down the remaining switchbacks, careless now of the noise I made. The parking area had to be close. It had to be. Another howl erupted behind me, but it was distant now. Back up on the ridge, he'd realized I was gone. The trees began to thin, and I could see open space ahead. The parking area. My car. I burst from the trailhead into the gravel lot, gasping for breath. 2 other vehicles sat in the lot, both empty. Mine was parked at the far end, and I sprinted toward it, digging frantically in my backpack for my keys. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip them when I finally found them. I threw myself into the driver's seat, locked all the doors, and started the engine with trembling fingers. Only then did I look back toward the trailhead. A figure emerged from the darkness between the trees, whose silhouette backlit by the faint glow of the clouded moon. He stood there, watching as I threw the car into reverse and backed out of the parking space. He didn't run toward me, didn't try to stop me. He just stood there, and as I swung the car toward the exit road, he raised his hand in a slow, deliberate wave. I drove faster than I should have on that winding mountain road, my eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror for headlights that never appeared. My knee had stopped bleeding but hurt terribly. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't call the police until I was 15 miles down the mountain, back in cell range, back in civilization. When I finally spoke to a sheriff's deputy, I tried to explain what had happened. A man howling like a wolf, following me, hunting me. They sent officers to check the trail the next morning. They found boot prints matching my story, Found the place where I'd fallen and left blood on a rock. But they never found him. No one matching my vague description. No vehicle registered to anyone suspicious. The deputy told me I'd been lucky, that I'd done everything right by running, by hiding. He said some people go into the woods looking for someone to terrorize, someone isolated and vulnerable. I haven't been back to Miller's Ridge Trail. I haven't been back to any trail alone. Sometimes at night I still hear that howl in my dreams, that uncanny sound of something human pretending to be animal, using our ancient fear of predators as a weapon. And I remember the wave, that casual gesture as I drove away, as if this had all been nothing more than an evening's entertainment for him, a game that he'd play again with someone else, on some other darkening trail.